Mr. Cope is here. And Mr. Mapp. Mr. Mapp. Mr. Windsor. And Mr. Stovall. Okay.
My name is Dwayne Stovall. Excuse me. My name is Dwayne Stovall, and I too am running for U.S. Senator in the great state of Texas, and I appreciate y'all for having this event. I've been at this a little longer than everybody else, about a year, maybe a little longer. My campaign has grown to a completely humbling size of about 1,100 volunteers across the state of Texas. I'm just a 48-year-old native Texan, a regular dad, husband, father, you name it. I'm a member of the school board, small businessman for Liberty County. And I always tell everybody there's nothing really that special about me. What I do know is that about 7 years ago I got into the Constitution, the framers, the founders, the state ratification debates. I wanted to know what that Constitution created. What I learned almost immediately was that Constitution based in federalism, where the states have the expansive powers, no longer exists. What we live under today is a nation with a capital N, based in socialism. The idea that we are limited in any way, shape, or form is basically gone. That national government can do anything it wants, any time it wants, and it has 9 unelected, well-connected individuals to say it's okay. Move along, citizen. Well, I'm running for this specific position because I have a very clear understanding of the proper role of a United States Senator. And that role is to protect the best interest of their state, period. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Okay? If you look at the behavior of senators over the last century, you'll find that without change, barring a few exceptions, they generally vote to increase the debt, to grow the size and scope of the federal government, and to give it unconstitutional powers. All at the expense of who? The states. They behave adversely to what they're supposed to be doing. So when you look at someone like Senator Cornyn, who I call his campaign Keeping Texas in the Red, not Keeping Texas Red, but when you look at someone like Senator Cornyn, who has behaved in a way that is polar opposite the protection of my kids and future generations of Texans, when they vote consistently with the Democrats to raise the debt, to grow the government, to give it unconstitutional power, do you consider them a Republican or conservative? I would say neither. I want to see a citizen statesman. I've wanted to see one my entire life. I'm tired of groomed, affiliated, produced establishment politicians brought in front of us and paraded as conservative when we know they're not. I just want one of us. And if I haven't had one in 48 years, I've decided I would be one. So I'm looking for your vote as well on March the 4th, early voting. And I'm glad to be here. And all these men are fine gentlemen, and we're going to have a good time this evening, I hope.
Now we come to the time where we'll ask each one a question, and we'll start, each one will get the question first, and then everybody can answer the question. They have 2 minutes. If somebody would like to rebut the answers, they have to stand up and do a dance, and then rebut the questions. They have 30 seconds for that. We'll start with the very first question, which goes to Mr. Cope, and this is about the Second Amendment. Some would interpret a well-regulated militia and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed as a solidification of the individual's right to own and possess a firearm for their defense, be it against a hostile attacker or tyrannical government.
The question is our position on the federal Second Amendment. Okay. I don't want to get all historical on everybody, but when they were writing the Constitution in Philadelphia, there was an issue. Not everybody signed off on the Constitution. Men like Elbridge Gerry, or Patrick Henry, George Mason, Edmund Randolph would not sign off on it. Why was that? Because they said the new government would be too strong. It would limit those free and independent states. And they said if they decided that would help them take it through the state ratification debates, if the very first act of business they did when they gathered the first Congress was to put further constraints on the new government. So as gentlemen they were, they barely passed it at the state level. At the first Congress, the very first thing they did was they put a Bill of Rights on it. I suggest everybody read the preamble to the Bill of Rights. It means what it says. I'll paraphrase. The states came together of their free choosing to put further constraints on its abuses. Its meaning that new government. When that Second Amendment says shall not infringe, it says the right to bear arms. That's a pre-existing right. You're born with the right to protect yourself. When it says that right shall not be infringed, it's the broadest term they could use. The federal government can get near it, talk about it, or create a subcommittee to discuss it. It shouldn't be in Texas dealing with us on how we manage our guns, and it should be stopped at the Red River every single time it brings up guns. It's a simple story for me. The Second Amendment restricts them from getting into our business as Texans.
Now we'll go to a different question. By the way, these questions were written by the college Republicans themselves.
Excuse me, if I wanted to rebut.
The question was, Dr. Benjamin Carson raised the issue of a flat tax at the prayer breakfast in 2013. Would you be in favor of a flat tax? And if so, how would that nullify various parts of tax collection today? I'm abbreviating.
Oh, depending on the methodology used, sure, I'd be for a flat tax. Of course, we all understand that would have to be generated in the House. It's not going to be dealt with in the Senate. We're only given the powers of advice and consent, so you're kind of limited on what you can do with that. If you could get everyone to coalesce around the idea of a flat tax or a flatter structure, it would necessarily reduce the size and scope of the IRS. I mean, it's built today as a strong arm of the federal government. That's all it does. It holds a gun to your head and says you will comply with our demands or else. If we can get into a flat structure, that would be a much better situation than we have today. Position on the Article 5 convention. I don't necessarily have a position against or for one. I understand both sides of the argument. As a matter of fact, it was posed to me by a scholar who's very well versed in the Constitution, who said, to look at it one way it is, if you are unwilling to use the mechanism that George Mason gave us in an Article 5 convention to rein in an out-of-control, unlimited national government, then you necessarily give your sanction to the out-of-control, unlimited national government you have today. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is this. I'm very fiscally minded. I pay very close attention to the budgetary aspect of the devaluation of our dollar and the creation of the debt. I don't think the timeline for an Article 5 is nearly as fast as the timeline for our devaluation of the dollar. Because the timeline we're dealing with is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 2/3 of the states to ask for a convention. Understand it's not an Article 5 to amend the Constitution. It's quite literally to make proposals. There's no amending the Constitution at the convention. They make proposals. Should you get those states to agree to a proposal for an amendment, it goes back through the Congress and kicks back out to the state legislatures. At that time, I think it's 3/4 of the states have to approve. So think about the timeline we're dealing with. First you get approval, then you get them all together, then they kick it back out to the state legislatures, and then we all get involved in our state legislature fighting over whether we want to approve it or not. So how many years do you think that would take to go through the whole process? I think by the time they got halfway through with that, we would probably have already defaulted on our currency and had a global issue. I'm much more concerned with the creation of debt and the Article 5 convention. You know, I just don't see it as being a realistic viewpoint at this time. I think the debt is much more serious.
I think we have two more gentlemen. And we'll start with Mr. Stovall. It's about the federal budget. Omnibus billing has become an element of much recent controversy since its inception in the 1970s. Well, it was derived to mitigate budget discussion to marginalize government fund shortages. Most recently, it was a direct cause of a shutdown. If elected, what would be your position in the event of a budget crisis in which only a portion of an omnibus budget deal was bad for the American people? And would you risk a shutdown to prevent its passage in the Senate? And what And what would be your resolve for such a crisis? Government shutdown.
Okay, we're talking about ominous bills, not omnibus bills. That's what I call them. Ominous bills is what I call them. The idea that you have to pass bulk budgets with everything inclusive is a joke. We haven't done that historically. We've done lots of periods in our time where we did piecemeal budgets. They passed them through one item at a time. It's a much easier way to do things. It's a lot more transparent. It's easier to control what we're doing. The idea that we've got to pass these big, gargantuan, expansive budgets is just crazy to me. Charlie, what was the second half of your question?
The second half about a government shutdown.
Oh, the government shutdown. Yeah, everybody understands that the government's been shut down many, many times, and it's never really cost anybody a dime. It always costs us. When the government shuts down, really the only people that lose are us. We lose the services, but we always raise the debt back up and create enough phony money to pay back everybody that's on vacation. So it's not, government shutdowns are completely misused by the federal government against us. If you take everything that we spend on servicing the debt, everything we spend on the Department of Health and Human Services, everything we spend on Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the military plus veterans benefits, don't cut any of it, put it all together, it equates to about $2.7 trillion this last go around. You know what we took in? About $3.1 trillion. They're not arguing with us over whether or not they give grandma in Florida a check or whether or not the military gets paid. That's a fear-mongering. What they're arguing over us with is whether they can scare us enough to give them the sanction to raise the debt and devalue the dollar and place our kids in servitude to a national government to keep it growing. It doesn't have anything to do with you and me. It's got to do with growing that power at the central level. That's it.
That's my answer.
I've got a relatively short answer to that. Anytime, and I mean anytime, they're going to place our family and friends and neighbors in harm's way as members of our military, there's a protocol. And any time that's going to take place, that argument needs to be made in front of the House, the People's House, for a definitive support system to give that authorization to the President before he runs off arbitrarily around the planet, placing my family and friends in harm's way. There is a Constitution still intact. We may not use it, but it would be nice if we got back to it. The protocol is there. I'd like to see that followed. The ACA is unconstitutional. I think everybody in this room knows that. I don't know a walking, talking Texan that doesn't agree with that. We all understand the Constitution gives no authority to the federal government to force us to buy good or service, much less does it have the authority to force us to provide a good or service at a rate they specify. It needs to be repealed. I don't care if they defund it. I don't care if they repeal it in total. Any way you go at it, you've got to repeal it. You've got to shut it down, and it's totally unconstitutional. Do not replace it with socialism light. What it is what it is, and we don't want to do that. As far as free markets go, once you have a government involved in anything, your free market goes out the window. So, you want free markets, you remove the government from the control mechanism. If you want to have government control mechanisms, guess where they lie? Right here in the state of Texas. There's 26 million of us here in the state of Texas. That's about 10 times more than were in all the states together when they ratified and implemented the Constitution. That's almost as many people as were in the United States when they fought the Civil War. We are quite capable of managing our affairs ourselves. The Commerce Clause was intended for the federal government to regulate commerce between the states, not to regulate state commerce in the state. That's what we have today. They regulate everything, everywhere, all the time. I am for divesting all of that power back to the states. I don't want to see a federal government control plan of any kind, especially one that thinks it has anything to do with free markets. That's a complete play on words.
Start at the extreme on my left and work in the other direction. 30 seconds for closing statements. 1 minute. I thought it was 30 seconds. I think the college Republicans just want to keep this going and going and going. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 1 minute? 30 seconds and no rebuttal to the closing statements. 30 seconds. No rebuttal to the closing statements.
450 miles to get here. That 60 seconds means a lot.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. My name is Dwayne Stovall. I have the largest campaign in the state. And I tell everybody, I was at a Lincoln Reagan dinner the other night, I told everybody we have the richest campaign in the state in sweat equity. What we don't have in millions of dollars, we have in lots of patriots with a lot of loyalty and a lot of support. And it's been, last year has been, it started out really tough, but now I've got some really highlights. I think we've got a chance to do something to really start correcting this path. I think the fact that we are going this direction, we've got more people in the Senate now that have liberty-minded viewpoints. It's taking us in the right direction. I think we just need to continue this. Go to TexasForStovall.com. You can find anything else you want to find out about, and you can get involved and donate if you care to. Thank you.